Do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?
The chandeliers sparkled, the guests clinked glasses, and the band played a lively tune. He was about to say, "I do," to his new rich mistress, grinning like the world belonged to him. But the doors burst open. Two small figures dashed down the aisle, shouting at the top of their lungs, "That's our father!" Mum is at the hospital. Guests froze. The bride's smile faltered. His face turned pale. No one expected this chaos, especially him. What do you think happened next? Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request, please. Subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. The chandeliers sparkled like frozen stars. Laughter floated through the grand ballroom, bouncing off marble walls and gold-lined mirrors. Every seat was filled with money, gossip, and perfume. Guests wore diamonds heavy enough to break necks and smiles fake enough to fool cameras. At the front of the hall, under a tall white arch of roses, Richard Hale stood, handsome, confident, and painfully aware of the cameras flashing around him. To everyone watching, he was a man who had rebuilt his life after tragedy, a man who had found happiness again. But if anyone had looked closer, really looked, they would have seen the tremor in his fingers and the sweat at the back of his neck. Because this wasn't happiness. This was performance. And deep down, Richard knew it, but he didn't mind. Clara Whitmore stood across from him in her diamond-studded gown, every inch of her perfection screaming wealth and control. Her smile was wide, elegant, and cold. She didn't just walk into a room, she owned it, and today she was about to own him. She reached out, touching Richard's cheek gently for the photographers. "Smile, darling," she whispered through her teeth. "You look guilty." Richard forced a smile, but his eyes betrayed him. He glanced over the crowd. Hundreds of people, powerful families, business partners, politicians, every one of them watching, every one of them believing the same story, that Richard's wife, Evelyn, had died in a car accident 6 months ago, that he was now moving forward, finally and nobly, with Clara, the woman who had helped him through the dark. A fairy tale for the newspapers, a lie for everyone else, because Evelyn Hale wasn't dead. She was lying in a hospital bed, fighting for her life, and Richard hadn't visited once. The music began again, soft, romantic, rehearsed. Clara tilted her head, basking in the attention. Her maid of honor whispered something, and Clara's smirk deepened. She didn't care about love. She cared about power, and this wedding was her victory parade. She'd waited years for this moment. She'd watched Richard climb from nothing, with her money, her connections, her manipulation, and now she was sealing the deal. Not just marriage, control. She leaned toward him again. "Remember what I told you," she murmured. "No tears. No mention of her. Today, it's just us." Richard nodded stiffly. "I know." "Good," she said, squeezing his hand hard enough to hurt. "Then let's give them a show." Outside the Grand Hotel, under a row of parked luxury cars, two small figures crouched behind a pillar. Liam and Lila Hale, 10 years old, identical twins, but not identical today. Liam's face was streaked with dirt and tears. Lila's small fists were clenched so tight her nails dug into her palms. They'd run here barefoot, slipping away from their aunt's car when she stopped for gas. They didn't know exactly what they would do. They just knew one thing. Their dad was marrying another woman, and their mom was still alive. Lila peeked around the pillar. "That's him," she whispered. "That's Dad." Liam's jaw trembled. "Why's he smiling like that?" "Doesn't he know Mom's still sick?" Her voice broke. "He knows." They'd overheard their aunt on the phone, heard every cruel word Clara's friend had said about their mother. Poor Evelyn. Maybe it's better she doesn't wake up. Can you imagine the embarrassment? That was when something in them snapped. Lila wiped her face. "We have to tell them." Tell who? Liam asked. Everyone. And before he could stop her, she bolted toward the doors. Inside, the ceremony was reaching its peak. The minister cleared his throat. Do you, Richard Hale, take Clara Whitmore? The words were sliced in half by the sound of crashing doors. Two small figures burst into the hall, their voices cutting through the music like a knife. That's our father, Lila shouted, her voice high, breaking. Mum's at the hospital, Liam added, breathless and panicked. The entire room froze. Every head turned, every camera swiveled. Richard's world tilted. For a heartbeat, he thought he was dreaming, hallucinating. The twins stood at the back of the aisle, shaking, staring straight at him. Dad, Liam cried, why are you doing this? Gas rippled through the hall like thunder. Whispers rose, cameras clicked. Our father? Mum's alive. What's going on? The band stopped playing mid-note. Richard's throat closed. Liam, Lila, he stammered, stepping forward instinctively. But Clara's hand shot out, striking him across the face and grabbing his wrist like a vice. Her face was still smiling, for the cameras, but her eyes were full of venom. She leaned toward him and hissed, You promised me they wouldn't be here. He swallowed hard. I didn't know they... Fix it, she whispered, her lips barely moving. Now! The twins ran forward down the aisle, dodging stunned guests. Lila clutched a crumpled hospital wristband in her hand. Dad, she shouted again, tears streaking her cheeks. Mom woke up, the nurse said. Enough! Clara's voice rang out, sharp and echoing across the hall. The twins froze. Every guest turned toward the bride, stunned at her sudden outburst. Clara's smile returned, controlled, polished, terrifying. Oh, how sweet, she said, voice dripping honey over poison. Children often struggle to move on after loss. She looked directly at the guests, not the twins. Poor things. Their mother's passing was very hard on them. Lila blinked, confused. Mom's not... But before she could finish, a security guard appeared behind them. Get them out, Clara said quietly. Wait, Richard's voice cracked. They're just... She turned to him sharply, eyes flashing. Not a word. The guards stepped forward. Lila screamed, trying to pull away as one of them grabbed her arm. Daddy, she cried, her voice echoing through the hall. Please, don't let them take us. Richard's chest heaved. His legs twitched forward. But he didn't move. He didn't say a word, because Clara was watching him, and every camera in the room was too. The crowd stared in shock as the twins were dragged out. Guests murmured, phones rising to record the chaos. One woman whispered, My God, are those really his kids? Another said, What a scandal. Clara smoothed her gown, her smile returning like nothing happened. Children, she said softly, almost sweetly. They don't always understand when adults fall in love again. And just like that, she turned back to the minister. Please, she said, continue. Richard stood frozen. The minister hesitated. The guests whispered louder, but Clara's expression made it clear. The show would go on. She stepped closer to Richard, her voice low and venomous. You listen to me, she said through her teeth. You don't look at that door. You don't speak their names. You stand here, you smile, and you finish what you started. He stared at her, at the woman who held his entire life by the throat, and said nothing. The minister cleared his throat again, pretending nothing had happened. Do you, Richard Hale? Richard couldn't hear the rest. His mind was back at the door. He could still hear Lila crying, still see Liam's small face, confused, betrayed. Mum's at the hospital. The words echoed in his head over and over. He felt the room spinning. He reached for his phone, fumbling in his pocket, needing to check, needing to know if it was true. And then he saw it, a single notification on his screen. One new message from St. Luke's Hospital. He unlocked the phone under the table, trying to be discreet. The message read, Patient Evelyn Hale, condition improving, requesting next of kin. His heart stopped. He looked up. Clara was smiling at the crowd, waving to a cameraman, glowing under the lights. He felt sick. The minister's voice sounded distant now. Do you, Clara Whitmore? Richard's hands were trembling. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. He knew he should leave. He knew he should go to the hospital. He knew. But then he looked at Clara, at the woman who could destroy him with a single phone call, and stayed still. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stood there, a man trapped in his own choices. And when the minister said, "You may now kiss the bride," Richard did, because everyone was watching, and Richard Hale had always been better at pretending than confessing. The doors slammed shut behind the twins, the heavy sound echoing down the marble hallway like thunder. Lila stumbled as the guard pushed her forward. Liam tried to pull her back, shouting, "Don't touch her!" "Calm down, kids," the guard grumbled, not unkindly but tired. "You can't interrupt a wedding like that." "It's not a wedding," Lila cried. "He's already married." "That's our dad. Our mom's in the hospital." The man sighed. "Look, I just follow orders." "Orders from her?" Liam asked, glaring toward the ballroom doors. "The woman in white?" The guard hesitated, then looked away. "Go home, kid." He waved for another security staffer, and the twins were led outside, through the glittering lobby full of guests pretending not to stare. People whispered behind champagne glasses. A few took photos. Someone muttered, "Unbelievable. He has children?" Lila's face burned with shame. Liam clenched his fists until his knuckles went white. They were small, too small for this kind of world. But even children can sense cruelty when it's aimed at them. Outside, the sunlight was harsh. The sound of laughter and violins still drifted faintly from inside. Lila sank onto the steps, wiping her face with her sleeve. "He didn't even say anything." Liam didn't answer. He was staring at the huge glass doors, his chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. "He saw us," Liam said quietly. "He looked right at us." And he didn't move. Lila sniffed. Maybe he couldn't. He turned to her sharply. He could. He just didn't want to. The bitterness in his voice was strange, too grown up for a 10-year-old. Lila's lip trembled. Why would he do that to Mom? He didn't answer, because he didn't know, because sometimes even children can tell when the truth is too ugly to speak aloud. Back inside, the wedding limped forward, a broken illusion held together by Clara Whitmore's sheer force of will. Her face was the picture of calm, radiant, poised, every hair in place. But her hands were trembling slightly as she adjusted her veil. The guests whispered. The air had changed. She could feel their judgment. In her world, humiliation was worse than crime, and Richard's children had just made her bleed in public. When the ceremony ended, she turned toward Richard, her smile frozen in place. She waited until the photographers had finished before grabbing his wrist and pulling him aside, her nails digging into his skin. "What the hell was that?" she hissed. "I didn't know they'd come." "You didn't know?" Her voice dropped to a sharp whisper. "You said your sister had them under control." "She did. They must have—" "Don't." Her eyes were blazing now. "You had one job, Richard." "One." He rubbed his wrist. "They're kids, Clara. They—" She stepped closer, her perfume sharp, her voice cold. "They're your mistake. Don't ever let your mistake embarrass me again." He stared at her. "They're my children." Clara tilted her head, smiling faintly. Not today, they weren't. And with that, she walked away, her gown sweeping behind her like a blade. At the back of the ballroom, the guests were buzzing like flies over fresh scandal. "Did you see the little girl's face? She said her mom's alive." "Impossible. Didn't Evelyn die?" "Well, apparently not." Phones were out. Messages were being typed. The story was already spreading. A bridesmaid tried to approach Clara, stammering, "Maybe we should pause the reception." Clara didn't even look at her. "The show goes on." "But the children—" "I said the show goes on, and it did." The band started up again. The waiters moved like ghosts. The guests forced nervous smiles. But the fairy tale was cracked now. Everyone could feel it. The tension in the air. The undercurrent of whispers. Clara danced, posed, toasted, laughed. But her smile never reached her eyes. Richard barely spoke. He sat at the head table, staring at his untouched drink, seeing flashes of the twins' faces in his mind. Lila crying, Liam shouting. "Dad, why are you doing this?" The words dug into him like knives. His phone buzzed again. Another message. From St. Luke's Hospital. Patient Evelyn Hale is awake. Urgent. Attending physician requests immediate family presence. He felt his pulse spike. He looked up. Clara was laughing with a group of guests, pretending the world was perfect. He slipped the phone into his pocket and stood up quietly. But before he could leave, a hand clamped around his arm. "Clara, where do you think you're going?" she asked softly. "I need some air." "You don't." "Clara." She leaned close, her voice barely audible over the music. "You walk out that door today, and everything I built for you disappears. Understand?" Her tone wasn't angry. It was calm, flat, deadly. He stared at her. "She's awake." Clara blinked. "Who?" "Evelyn." A small smile touched her lips. "How lucky. Maybe she can finally sign those divorce papers herself." Richard's jaw tightened. She patted his chest gently. "Now go smile for the cameras, darling." "You're the groom, remember?" He didn't move. "Go on," she whispered. "Smile." And so, once again, he did. Outside, the twins sat on the curb, exhausted and silent. Cars came and went. Guests stared from their tinted windows. A few reporters loitered at the entrance, sniffing for gossip. Lila's tears had dried, but her face was streaked with salt. "I hate her," she said quietly. "Who?" "That woman." "The one in the white dress," Liam nodded. "Me too." They sat there for a while, watching pigeons peck at crumbs near the sidewalk. The world felt huge, unfair, cold. Finally, Lila whispered, "What are we going to do now?" Liam didn't know. He was trying not to cry again. But then, through the spinning door, a woman in a nurse's uniform hurried out, still wearing her hospital badge. She scanned the area, her eyes landing on the two small figures sitting on the curb. "Liam? Lila Hale?" she called softly. The twins looked up, startled. "Yes?" Lila said. "Well, that's us." The nurse walked closer, her expression kind but urgent. "You're Mrs. Evelyn Hale's children, right?" Liam stood up quickly. "Yes, that's our mom. Is she okay?" The nurse crouched down so she was eye level with them. Her voice was gentle but firm. "She just woke up," she said. "She's been asking for you." Lila's breath caught. She's awake?" The nurse nodded. "She's weak but stable." The first thing she said was, "Your names." For a moment, the twins couldn't move. Then Lila let out a sound, half laugh, half sob, and threw her arms around Liam. The nurse smiled faintly. "Come on, I'll take you there." Liam looked back at the hotel, the towering glass doors, the echo of fake music drifting out, the place where their fathers stood pretending to be happy. Then he turned back to the nurse. "Okay," he said, "let's go to Mom." Back inside the ballroom, Richard's phone buzzed again. He pulled it out under the table, hands shaking. Message from Dr. Conway. Evelyn Hale regained consciousness. Immediate family contact required. He stared at it for a long moment. Clara was still laughing, toasting with her crystal glass, her diamonds flashing under the lights. He could feel the eyes of the guests on him, the cameras, the press, the weight of the deal, the money, the power. He looked down at his phone again. His thumb hovered over the screen, over the words Evelyn Hale. Then slowly, he turned the phone over and set it face down on the table. He picked up his glass, smiled for the next photographer, and pretended he didn't hear the ghost of his children's voices echoing in his head. Across town in the quiet room of St. Luke's Hospital, machines beeped softly. Evelyn Hale's eyes fluttered open. The ceiling lights blurred above her. Her throat was dry, her body weak. But her mind was fighting through the fog. She saw a nurse by her side, then her children running toward her, their small faces full of tears and relief. "Mom!" Lila cried, throwing herself onto the bed. Evelyn blinked, dazed. "Lila?" "Liam." "We came from the wedding," Liam said, his voice trembling. "Dad's marrying someone else." He said you..." Evelyn's heart twisted. "Wedding?" Lila nodded, sobbing. "She hit him. She told everyone you were dead." For a moment, Evelyn just stared at them, trying to make sense of the words. Then the memories came rushing back. The argument, the rain, the car, the sudden loss of control. Her voice was a whisper. "Where's your father?" Neither of the twins answered. Evelyn's lips parted again, her voice faint but clear. "Where's your father?" The question hung in the air, heavy, aching, endless. The camera would fade out here, on Evelyn's weak but burning eyes, her trembling hand gripping her daughter's. A mother waking into betrayal, a man pretending it didn't happen, a storm about to begin. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from and how did this story speak to you? The rain hadn't stopped since the night Evelyn Hale woke up, beat against the hospital windows like fingers tapping out a warning. Steady and cold. The smell of antiseptic filled the air. Machines hummed softly beside her bed. Evelyn stared at the ceiling, still trying to remember how she got there. The sharp turn on the wet road, Richard's angry face in the headlights, the sound of tires screeching. Then nothing, just darkness. And then the light when she opened her eyes again. Her throat burned when she tried to speak. "Where?" she whispered, her voice raspy. "Where am I?" A nurse appeared quickly, smiling gently. "St. Luke's Hospital, Mrs. Hale. You've been here for 3 months." Evelyn blinked. "3 months?" "Yes, ma'am. You were in a coma, but you're safe now, safe." That word didn't feel right. Not yet. She tried to move, but pain shot through her chest. Her arms trembled. She felt fragile, a ghost wearing her own skin. Then she saw them. 2 small faces pressed against the window of the room, Liam and Lila. Her heart lurched. The nurse smiled again. "Your children have been waiting. Should I let them in?" Evelyn nodded weakly. "Please." The twins rushed in, their sneakers squeaking on the floor. Lila climbed onto the bed carefully while Liam held her hand. "Mom!" Lila cried, hugging her carefully. "You're awake!" Evelyn could barely breathe, but she smiled anyway. "Hey, baby. Hey, sweetheart." Liam's eyes were red, his voice shaky. "We thought you'd never wake up." "I'm here now," she whispered, brushing his hair back. "I'm right here." They clung to her for a long time, the kind of hug that makes up for weeks of fear and silence. But when they finally pulled back, Evelyn saw something in their faces. Something heavy. Fear, confusion, hurt. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. The twins looked at each other, and then Lila's eyes filled again. "It's Dad," she said. Evelyn's breath caught. "Your father?" He married someone else," Liam said quietly. For a moment she thought she'd misheard. "What?" Lila nodded. "We saw it. He was wearing a tuxedo. She was wearing a white dress. Everyone was watching. Her hands went cold." "Who?" "Her name's Clara," Liam said. "She told everyone you were dead." Evelyn stared at them, every word cutting deeper. "He told people I was dead." The twins nodded. "And you were there?" Lila's lip quivered. "We tried to stop it. We told everyone you were in the hospital. They didn't believe us. The lady, Clara, she said we were lying. Then she told men to throw us out." Evelyn covered her mouth, her body trembling. "Dad didn't do anything," Liam whispered. "He just stood there." For a moment there was only the sound of the rain against the glass. Her heart ached in a way that felt physical. Sharp, deep, merciless. Richard, the man she built everything with. The man she trusted with her life. The man who swore he loved her. She closed her eyes. "He was at a wedding while I was in this bed?" Neither of them answered. Evelyn opened her eyes again, forcing calm into her voice. "It's okay. You're safe now. We'll talk about this later." But inside, something dark and cold was spreading through her chest. That evening, her sister Martha arrived. Red hair tucked under a rain hood, face drawn with exhaustion. The minute she walked in, Evelyn knew the look. It was the look people give when they don't know how to say something terrible. "Oh, Evie," Martha sighed, rushing to her side. You look better. I can't believe you're finally awake. Evelyn gave a weak smile. What's going on, Martha? Tell me. Martha hesitated. You should rest. I've been resting for months. Talk. Martha exhaled, sat down, and took her sister's hand. Okay, I'm going to tell you everything. And she did, piece by piece, like dropping shards of glass into Evelyn's lap. Richard hadn't just walked away. He'd wiped her out. He'd closed their joint accounts, sold her car, transferred the house into his own name. Then he moved into Clara Whitmore's mansion. Her father owns Whitmore Holdings, Martha explained. Old money, connections everywhere. Richard's been showing up at events with her for months. They said you didn't make it after the crash, that he was heartbroken. Evelyn stared at the wall. Heartbroken, she repeated softly. Martha's voice cracked. Evie, I tried to fight it. I talked to the bank. They said everything was signed legally. Your signature's on the papers. Evelyn frowned. That's impossible. I know, Martha said quickly. That's why I think someone forged it. Evelyn's mind spun. So what's left? The house? My savings? Martha's silence was answer enough. Finally, Evelyn whispered, He took everything. Yes. Evelyn leaned back against the pillow, staring at the ceiling. For years, she'd been the one who believed in him, encouraged him, helped him build his business from nothing. She'd skipped vacations, missed sleep, sold her jewelry to help him make payroll once. And while she was lying broken in a hospital bed, he'd taken everything they built and handed it to the woman who helped destroy her. Martha wiped her eyes. I'm so sorry, Evie. I wanted to tell you when you woke up, but I didn't know how. Evelyn didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just went very still, like something deep inside her had cracked, but not shattered. After a long moment, she said quietly, Where are the kids staying? With me, Martha said. You'll come home when you're strong enough. Evelyn nodded faintly. Good. Martha hesitated, then asked, What are you going to do? Evelyn's eyes drifted toward the window. The rain had stopped. The clouds were clearing, leaving a pale sliver of moon. What I should have done a long time ago, she said softly. Get back up. Later that night, when the lights were dim and the twins were asleep on the couch beside her bed, Evelyn stared at the ceiling again. Her body ached, her heart was raw, but her mind was awake, sharper than it had been in years. She replayed the argument before the accident. Richard's face, his voice, his words. You're holding me back, Evie. I can't build something bigger if you keep dragging me down with your doubts. And then, hours later, the rain-slick road, the brakes that didn't respond, the world spinning, the crash. Her hands tightened around the blanket. Brakes don't just fail like that, she whispered to herself. For the first time, the thought crossed her mind. And it didn't leave. What if it wasn't an accident? The next morning, a nurse brought in a large envelope. This came for you, Mrs. Hale, she said. No return address. Evelyn frowned. Who sent it? Don't know. A courier dropped it off. The nurse left. Evelyn stared at the envelope for a moment before tearing it open. Inside were photographs. At first, she didn't understand. They were glossy, professional, clearly taken by someone hired for discretion. In the first photo, Richard and Clara were at a hotel bar, laughing, heads close, his hand on hers. The timestamp in the corner read 2 weeks before her accident. In another, they were at a restaurant, her wearing the same bracelet she wore at the wedding. And then, the last photo stopped Evelyn's breath. It showed Richard sitting at a desk, signing a document, and above his hand, her signature already inked at the bottom of the page. She leaned closer. It was her name, but she'd never seen that document before. Her vision blurred. He hadn't just betrayed her emotionally, he'd stolen from her, planned it, forged her signature to erase her. Her hands shook as she flipped the photo over. On the back, written in neat handwriting, he started lying long before you crashed. No name, no address, just that sentence. Evelyn sat there for a long time. The photos spread across her lap like evidence in a trial. Then she whispered, I wasn't supposed to wake up, was I? The truth settled in her chest like fire. She wasn't a victim of bad luck. She was a target. And whoever sent these photos, they knew everything. That night she could barely sleep. Every sound in the hospital felt amplified. The ticking clock, the distant intercom, her own heartbeat. When morning came, she asked to be discharged early. The doctor protested. "You're not strong enough yet, Mrs. Hale." "I'll recover faster at home," she said flatly. He hesitated, but eventually signed the papers. By noon, she was sitting in Martha's car, clutching the manila envelope against her chest. Outside the window, the city rolled by. Streets, buildings, billboards, all blurred by the rain. She wasn't seeing any of it. She was seeing Richard's face, smiling, lying, destroying. She whispered, barely audible, "You thought I'd stay down." But she wasn't down anymore. The ride home was silent. Rain streaked across the car windows, and the city outside looked like a painting smudged by grief. Martha drove, glancing at her sister now and then. But she didn't speak. There were no words for what had been done. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat, pale and exhausted, the manila envelope resting in her lap. Every few minutes, she touched it, as if making sure it was real, that the proof of betrayal didn't vanish. When they reached Martha's house, the twins ran out from the porch, their faces lighting up the moment they saw her. Lila shouted, "Mom!" and threw her arms around Evelyn's waist before she'd even stepped inside. Evelyn hugged both of them tightly, inhaling the scent of their hair, warm and familiar. It grounded her, pulled her back from the edge of despair. "I missed you so much," she whispered. Liam's small voice came muffled against her shoulder. "Are we going home soon?" She hesitated. Home. The word hit her like a stone. "Not yet," she said softly. "We'll stay with Aunt Martha for a little while, okay?" They nodded, but she could see the question in their eyes. Why can't we go home? She couldn't answer it. Not yet. Inside, Martha had set up the guest room. Clean sheets, soft lighting, the smell of chamomile from a diffuser in the corner. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed, taking in the quiet. The walls were covered in family photos. Summer trips, birthdays, memories from a world that already felt distant. Martha lingered at the door. "I'll get you some soup," she said softly. "Thank you," Evelyn murmured. When her sister left, Evelyn reached for the envelope again. She spread the photographs on the nightstand, one by one. Richard's smile in every shot looked the same. Confident, calculated, fake. Clara's gaze was always on him, not like a woman in love, but a woman in control. Evelyn's stomach turned. She picked up the photo of Richard forging her signature and stared at it until her vision blurred. Her whisper broke the silence. "You tried to erase me." She didn't cry. She couldn't. It was past tears now. Later that evening, after the twins fell asleep, Evelyn wandered quietly through the small house. The sound of the rain had faded. The night was still. She found herself standing in front of a wooden cabinet in the hallway, an old piece of furniture that once belonged to their mother. Martha had inherited it after their mother's passing years ago. Evelyn ran her fingers along the carved edges. "Mom would have known what to do," she said softly. She opened the top drawer out of habit and froze. Inside, wrapped in yellow tissue paper, was a small envelope addressed in their mother's handwriting. To Evelyn. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. The paper was brittle, the ink slightly faded. She unfolded it carefully and began to read. "My Evie, if you ever find yourself hurt by Richard, don't let pride keep you silent. There are things I've kept hidden because I feared you'd be too kind to see the truth. Go to room 204, Whitmore Holdings. You'll find what he's built on your back and what he's hiding behind your name. Love, Mom." Evelyn stared at the letter, her breath coming faster. Her mother had written this before she died. The letter wasn't just a warning, it was proof that her mother knew. "Whitmore Holdings," Evelyn whispered. "Clara's family company." She felt dizzy for a second. How could her mother have known about them? About Clara? But then she remembered. Her mother had always been skeptical of Richard. "He's ambitious, Evie," she used to say. "Too ambitious." A man like that loves power more than people. Evelyn had brushed it off. She'd believed love could change him. Now she knew better. Martha found her a few minutes later, sitting on the floor with a letter in her lap. "What's that?" she asked. Evelyn handed it to her silently. Martha read it, her eyes widening. "She wrote this? When?" "I don't know," Evelyn said softly, but she knew. About him, about all of it. Martha sat beside her. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," Evelyn said slowly, "that if Mom told me to go to room 204, I need to see what's there." Martha frowned. "Evie, you just got out of the hospital. I don't care. You can't face those people alone?" Evelyn looked up, her voice calm but steely. "I've faced worse alone." Martha hesitated. "Then I'm going with you." Evelyn gave her a tired smile. "No, you need to stay with the twins." Martha shook her head. "You think I'm going to let you walk into Whitmore's building alone after what they've done?" "Not a chance," Evelyn sighed. "Martha, no." Her sister's tone softened. "I can't protect you from everything, but I can stand beside you." Evelyn looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She lay awake listening to the twins breathing in the next room, her mind spinning with fragments. The crash, the letter, the photographs, Clara's smile at the wedding. It was all connected. Somehow it had to be. Every part of her wanted to storm into that building now, demand answers, make them pay. But she was still too weak, too tired, and she needed a plan. So she waited, and while she waited, she remembered. Flashback, it was a cold night, months before the accident. Evelyn had been waiting up for Richard. The house smelled like burnt coffee and rain. When he finally walked in, his shirt smelled faintly of expensive perfume. "You're late," she said quietly. "Business dinner," he muttered, setting his briefcase down. "At midnight," he glared at her. "Do you have to question everything I do?" "I have to question when my husband lies to me," she shot back. Richard's jaw tightened. "You think I'm cheating? After everything I've done for this family?" She laughed bitterly. "You mean everything I helped you do? The company you started in my father's garage? The one I helped finance with my savings?" He stepped closer, voice low and dangerous. "Don't throw that in my face." "I'm not," she said. "I'm reminding you who stood beside you before you started pretending you were someone else." He stared at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "Maybe I don't want to be reminded." The words hit her like a slap. He grabbed his coat again. "I'm going out. Don't wait up." The door slammed. That was the night she first smelled fear. Not of losing him, but of what he was becoming. Back in the present, Evelyn sat up, the memory burning behind her eyes. The road to that accident had started long before the crash, and now for the first time, she could see it clearly. The next morning, she stood in front of the mirror, tying her hair back. Her reflection was pale but fierce. Martha appeared behind her, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You sure you're ready?" Evelyn took a sip and nodded. "I'm done being afraid." Martha gave a half smile. "That's the Evie I remember." Evelyn picked up the envelope of photos and the letter from their mother, tucking them into her purse. As she turned to leave, Martha asked quietly, "What are you hoping to find?" Evelyn paused at the doorway. "The truth," she said, "and if I can't find that, answers good enough to destroy the lies." They left the house before sunrise. The streets were slick and quiet, the city waking slowly. The Whitmore Holdings building towered above the skyline, glass and steel gleaming in the morning light. Evelyn stared up at it through the windshield. The logo glittered on the front doors, a golden W inside a crown, the same company that had funded her husband's rise. The same company Clara ruled from behind her perfect smile. Martha parked a block away. "You sure about this?" Evelyn nodded. "Room 204. Whatever's there, I need to see it." She opened the car door, her hands trembling slightly. As she stepped out, the wind tugged at her hair. She straightened her coat and squared her shoulders. Behind her, Martha said quietly, "You look like Mom right now." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Good." She took one last breath and started walking toward the building. Inside, the lobby was sleek and cold. Marble floors, silver accents, walls lined with photographs of Clara and her father at charity events. Evelyn walked up to the front desk. The receptionist smiled politely. "Good morning. How can I help you?" Evelyn forced a calm tone. "I'm here to see someone in room 204. The woman glanced at her screen. "Do you have an appointment?" "No." The receptionist's smile tightened. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but access to that floor is restricted to Whitmore executives." Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "Tell them Evelyn Hale is here." "They'll want to see me." The woman hesitated, picked up the phone, and spoke quietly. Evelyn couldn't hear the words, but she saw the color drain from the receptionist's face. The woman hung up slowly and looked at her. "Someone will meet you shortly?" Evelyn nodded. She didn't know what she would find behind that door, but she knew one thing. It wouldn't be forgiveness. The camera would close in here, on Evelyn's trembling hand gripping her mother's letter, her eyes sharp with purpose. "Room 204, she whispered. "Let's see what secrets you've been hiding." The elevator doors slid open. She stepped inside. The elevator hummed as it climbed, the digital floor numbers flickering upward like a countdown to danger. Evelyn's reflection in the mirrored walls barely looked like her. Her once soft brown hair was tied into a neat bun. Her makeup was minimal, her face paler than she remembered. She wore a tailored gray blazer borrowed from Martha and a visitor badge clipped neatly to her chest. Temporary staff. Internal audit. The name on the badge wasn't hers. It read, Emily Hart. Her heart thudded hard with each passing floor. She'd memorized everything she needed. The layout, the entry codes, the time when the executive floor's staff took their lunch breaks. But none of that mattered now. Not really, because she was about to walk into the place her mother had warned her about. Room 204. When the elevator chimed, she took a breath and stepped out. The 20th floor of Whitmore Holdings was silent. The air smelled of money and control, expensive perfume, polished wood, and quiet fear. Rows of glass offices lined the hallway, each one sleek and sterile. Framed photos of charity galas and award ceremonies hung on the walls. Clara's smile was in almost every one of them. Evelyn walked past the receptionist, who barely looked up from her phone. She kept her head down, her ID badge visible. Her pulse raced, but her steps were steady. Halfway down the hall, she stopped in front of a frosted glass door marked Archives, Room 204. The keycard reader blinked red. Evelyn reached into her pocket and pulled out a stolen employee access card. Martha's friend at the bank, an old acquaintance, had gotten it for her after hearing about Evelyn's situation. She prayed it still worked. She swiped the card. The light turned green. The door clicked open. The room was colder than the hallway, dim, windowless, filled with metal cabinets and locked drawers. Fluorescent lights hummed above her. Evelyn closed the door behind her and locked it. Her breath fogged slightly in the cold air. A faint hum came from the far end. A computer terminal, still on standby. She moved toward it, every sound amplified by her nerves. Her fingers shook as she typed, Hale. Hundreds of documents appeared. Contracts, property transfers, legal agreements. Every one of them had her name somewhere on it. Her stomach tightened as she clicked the first file. The deed to their family home. Her own digital signature stared back at her. The next file, a bank transfer of $180,000 from her joint account to a shell company. Signed by both her and Richard, except the her on that screen wasn't her. It was forged. Her heart pounded as she clicked another folder. Whitmore Hale Partnership Agreement. She scrolled down, eyes catching on something that made her stop breathing. Clara Whitmore, Chief Financial Officer. Clara's signature was on every page. She had approved every transaction Richard made, every fake transfer, every forged document. Evelyn's chest ached with anger. She whispered to herself, "You did this together." For a long moment, she just stood there, hands gripping the desk so tight her knuckles turned white. Then she spotted something else. A folder labeled Audio Archives. She clicked it. There were dozens of files, mostly meeting recordings, executive discussions. But one caught her eye. Private _ Richard _ Clara _ confidential.mp3. Her hand hovered over the mouse, then she clicked. The audio crackled, then came alive. Clara's voice, sharp, smooth. cold. She's too good for you, Richard. Too pure. You'll never be the man she thinks you are. A pause, then Richard's voice, tired, defensive. I loved her, Clara, but she doesn't understand what I need. She wants a quiet life. You want power, Clara cut in. You just don't want to admit it. Another pause. Then Clara's voice dropped, a whisper like ice. Let me handle her. I'll make her disappear, and you'll finally belong to me. Evelyn's knees almost gave out. She pressed a hand to her mouth, muffling a sound that was half sob, half disbelief. The recording continued, Richard saying something, a nervous laugh, a weak protest. But Evelyn couldn't listen anymore. Her heart was hammering too loudly. She clicked to stop. Her fingers trembled as she leaned back. Clara hadn't just known. She'd orchestrated everything. The accident, the lies, the theft. It was all her. And Richard, the man she'd once loved, had let it happen. She forced herself to focus. She couldn't break down here. Not yet. She started transferring copies of the files onto a flash drive she'd brought, her hands shaking but precise. As she waited, she noticed something strange. A folder at the bottom marked Vehicle Incidents. Her heart stopped for a moment. She opened it. Inside was a file labeled, Subject Evelyn Hale, Incident Log. There it was, her accident. She clicked it open. The document was short, clinical, no emotion, no remorse. Vehicle identified, Hale family sedan. Report, braking system failure. No police investigation requested. Internal note, handled by security team, R. Mendez, per C. Whitmore's instruction. Her eyes went wide. R. Mendez. She remembered the name. One of Clara's private security drivers, always standing by her at events. Evelyn's mouth went dry. Clara hadn't just planned to take her husband. She'd planned to take her life. Her chest heaved. She tried to kill me, she whispered. The words felt unreal, but they were written, archived, recorded. Her attempted murder filed away like a business transaction. Evelyn grabbed the flash drive, heart pounding in her throat. She'd copied everything, every file, every recording, every proof. She shut the folder and started for the door. When the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, she froze. Voices. 2 women. You sure someone's in there? Yeah, the system log shows the archive room's active. Her pulse spiked. She looked around the room. There was no other exit. Only one narrow ventilation panel above a filing cabinet. The voices came closer. Evelyn quickly switched off the computer and ducked behind the cabinet, crouching low. The door clicked open. Light spilled in. Hello, one of them called. Evelyn held her breath, heart slamming against her ribs. A pause. Probably IT again, the other voice said. They're always pulling files. The door shut. Footsteps faded. Evelyn stayed there for a few more seconds, barely daring to breathe. When the hallway finally fell silent again, she slipped out of her hiding spot, heart still racing. She checked her purse. The flash drive was there, safe. Then she quietly opened the door and stepped out into the hall. She was halfway to the elevator when she heard laughter down the corridor. A laugh she knew too well. Clara Whitmore. Evelyn's blood went cold. Instinctively, she ducked into a small alcove beside a decorative plant, peering around the corner. Clara was walking toward her office, arm linked with a tall, broad-shouldered man in a navy suit. Her laughter was soft and dangerous. Oh, don't worry about Richard, she was saying. He's almost finished. Once he's ruined, I'll take his company too. The man chuckled. Still playing games, Clara? Clara smiled up at him. You should know me by now, Adrian. I don't play games I can't win. Evelyn's stomach twisted. Adrian, Clara's ex-fiancé. The man she left when she started her affair with Richard. And now here she was, laughing, whispering, her hand on another man's chest while her new husband sat clueless in her web. Richard wasn't her prize. He was her pawn. Evelyn watched as Clara leaned in and kissed him, slow and confident. Then Clara said, almost lazily, Richard's biggest mistake was thinking he could betray me. They disappeared into her office. Evelyn stood frozen in the hallway, her mind spinning. Everything she'd ever believed about her life, Her marriage, her accident, even her downfall, had been orchestrated by these two monsters. Her love, her home, her safety, all stolen. And now she finally had proof. She exhaled shakily, whispering, "It's over, Clara. It's over," but the whisper wasn't for fear anymore. It was for promise. Back in Martha's house that night, the air was heavy with silence. Evelyn sat at the kitchen table, the flash drive plugged into her laptop. The twins were asleep again, unaware of the storm brewing in the next room. Martha sat across from her, watching in disbelief as Evelyn showed her the documents. "Oh my God," Martha whispered. "She did all this?" "Yes," Evelyn said quietly. "She and Richard." Martha's hand flew to her mouth as she read the security report. "Evie, the brakes, they—" "She ordered it," Evelyn said flatly. "Clara Whitmore tried to have me killed." Martha's voice trembled. "What are you going to do?" Evelyn looked up from the screen. Her eyes were steady. "I'm going to burn them down," she said. The next few days passed in a blur of planning. Evelyn contacted old friends discreetly, a lawyer she once helped, a journalist she'd met at a charity event. She didn't trust anyone completely, but she knew enough about power to know one thing. The truth means nothing unless it's seen. She gathered everything: the recordings, the forged documents, the incident reports. She organized them into folders, labeled and dated. She wrote down the timeline: her marriage, Richard's company, the Whitmore partnership, the accident, the wedding. Then finally she opened her laptop's camera. Her reflection stared back at her, the face of a woman who had been erased and clawed her way back. She pressed record. The red light blinked on. Evelyn took a breath and began. "My name is Evelyn Hale. If you're watching this, it means I've decided to tell the truth. All of it." Her voice was calm, low, and steady. "For years, I supported my husband, Richard Hale. Together, we built everything he owns. When he met Clara Whitmore, he didn't just betray me, he tried to destroy me. When I discovered the affair, we argued. That night, I had a car accident. The brakes failed. I almost died." She paused, her jaw tightening. "It wasn't an accident." She lifted the photo of the report toward the camera. "Clara Whitmore ordered one of her security staff to tamper with my car. I have proof. It's all here." She reached for the next folder, showing the forged documents. "These are contracts signed under my name, stolen, falsified, and approved by Clara Whitmore herself. Richard Hale helped her do it. Together, they transferred my assets, my home, and my company shares into their hands." Her eyes didn't waver. "I was supposed to die that night, but I didn't, and now I want the world to know who they are." Her tone hardened. "To Clara Whitmore, you built your empire on lies and blood. To Richard Hale, you built your life on my back. You both wanted me erased." She leaned closer to the camera. "Let's see who vanishes first." She ended the recording. For a long moment, Evelyn just sat there, staring at the laptop screen. Her hands were trembling, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from the fire running through her veins. Martha stood behind her, tears in her eyes. "Evie, you really did it." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Not yet." She copied the video onto 3 USB drives. Then she wrote down addresses on envelopes. One for Whitmore Holdings Board of Directors, one for Clara's father, and one for a journalist she trusted. Each one got a flash drive and a printed summary of her evidence. By the time she sealed the last envelope, the morning sun was beginning to rise. She walked to the window, watching the light spill over the rooftops, the first sunlight she'd felt as a free woman. Martha came to stand beside her. "What happens now?" Evelyn smiled, the first real smile she'd managed since the night of the crash. "Now," she said softly, "now we wait for the truth to do what I can't." She turned away from the window, picking up the envelopes one by one. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "They took my life apart, piece by piece," she said. "I'm just returning the favor." She slipped the envelopes into her bag, and before she walked out the door, she looked back once, at the photos of her children, sleeping peacefully on the couch. She touched the frame and whispered, "It's almost over." Then she stepped outside, sunlight catching her face. Her car engine started, quiet and sure. The camera would linger on her hands as she placed the letters into a mailbox, one by one, the sound of them sliding in like the closing of a door. When the last one fell, she exhaled. A new kind of silence filled the air. Not grief, not fear, but power. Evelyn looked straight ahead, her expression calm and cold. She whispered to herself, "You both wanted me erased. Let's see who vanishes first." The city glittered that night like it wanted to hide its sins under light. Every tower gleamed, every street buzzed with noise, and at the heart of it all, the Grand Regent Hotel pulsed like a living thing. Cameras, luxury cars, reporters in suits. Inside, the ballroom looked even grander than before. Chandeliers like suns, gold runners, crystal centerpieces. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a performance. The second one. Clara Whitmore had made sure the entire city knew it. This renewal ceremony, she called it, a public display of unity after unfortunate rumors. Every major outlet was there. Every investor, every socialite desperate for gossip. And front and center, smiling too wide under the spotlights, stood Richard Hale, the man who looked like he might throw up at any moment. The violinist played softly. Guests clinked glasses. The scent of roses and perfume filled the air. Richard's tuxedo was perfect, his hair slicked back, his expression carefully practiced. But anyone watching closely could see the tension in his eyes. He hadn't been sleeping. Not since the first whisper started. He knew something was coming. He could feel it, like pressure before a storm. Still, he stood there beside Clara, pretending everything was fine. The bride was radiant in white silk, her diamonds winking under the lights. Her smile was sharp, predatory. If Richard was afraid, Clara wasn't. She had built her life on control, and tonight she intended to prove that nothing and no one could touch her. As she walked through the crowd, people leaned in to compliment her, flatter her, fawn over her success. She absorbed every word like sunlight. When a reporter asked how she and Richard had survived such terrible rumors, she laughed lightly and said, "Truth always wins. And love, real love, never falters." She was good. Too good. Even Richard almost believed her for a second. At the far end of the ballroom, unnoticed among the catering staff, Evelyn Hale adjusted the black cap on her head. Her uniform was plain. Black slacks, white shirt, an apron tied tight. She blended perfectly with the other servers, her tray of champagne flutes steady in her hands. Her hair was shorter now, her makeup subtle. To anyone glancing her way, she was just another face. But under the polite smile, her heart was steel. Every detail of tonight had been planned. Every cable, every timing cue, every file upload. She had waited for this moment, watched for it, built it, and now it was here. From her position near the back, she could see the stage clearly. Richard and Clara standing beneath a massive screen, showing their smiling faces in a loop. Her fingers brushed against the small remote in her pocket, no bigger than a car key. Her voice memo, the one she recorded, was uploaded, ready to play. All it needed was one press. The ceremony began with pomp and polish. The host announced them as a couple that embodies power, perseverance, and love. Evelyn almost laughed. She remembered when Richard used to say those words about her. The speeches started. First, Clara's father, proud and self-satisfied. He talked about business growth, family legacy, and the strength of forgiveness. Then Clara took the microphone, her voice smooth and confident. "I know some of you have heard stories," she began, smiling sweetly, "but what matters most is that love, true love, always survives the storm." Richard and I are proof of that polite applause. Camera flashes. Evelyn's hands clenched on the tray. She'd seen people lie before, but Clara was an artist. Every gesture was calculated. The soft tilt of her head, the fake shimmer of tears when she mentioned healing from loss. Clara looked straight at Richard as she said, "We've come through darkness." Together, Richard nodded mechanically, eyes empty. He looked like a man walking a plank and pretending it was a dance floor. After the speeches, the music shifted to a lighter tune. Guests began to mingle again. The lights dimmed slightly. Richard drifted toward the bar, pulling at his tie. One of the groomsmen clapped him on the shoulder. "Smile, buddy. You look like you're at your own funeral." Richard forced a laugh. "Feels like it." The man chuckled and walked away. Richard reached for a glass of whiskey, his third already, and stared into it. He was thinking about the emails that had gone unanswered, the strange messages that had started coming in, the uneasy feeling that someone was watching, and somewhere, in a quiet part of his mind, he was thinking about Evelyn. Her eyes, her voice. The last time he'd seen her alive, he didn't believe in ghosts, but lately he felt haunted anyway. "Darling," Clara's voice cut through his thoughts. He turned. She stood behind him, flawless as ever. She smiled that picture-perfect smile. "You're not drinking too much, are you?" "Just enough," he muttered. She leaned in close, her whisper sharp. "Tonight is important. Don't ruin it." He met her eyes. "You're not worried?" "About what?" she said lightly. "The rumors. The press. People talking." She smirked. "Let them talk. As long as they're watching me, I win." Then she straightened and called across the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, my husband would like to make a toast." Richard froze. Clara took his arm, guiding him toward the microphone before he could protest. The crowd applauded. Cameras turned. Evelyn watched from the edge of the room, her pulse quickening. This was it, the moment. Richard took the mic, forcing a weak smile. "Thank you," he said hoarsely. I just want to say how grateful I am for everyone here. For family, for forgiveness, and for second chances." Clara beamed beside him, holding his hand for the cameras. He swallowed hard. "To my wife, Clara, for standing by me, for believing in me." He stopped mid-sentence. His gaze had landed on something. A woman near the back of the room, half hidden in the shadows. For a second he thought he was seeing a ghost. Her eyes met his. Calm, steady, familiar. He blinked. The woman turned away, slipping behind a pillar. His voice faltered. For believing that love can survive anything." Clara nudged him with a sharp elbow, still smiling for the cameras. Evelyn exhaled quietly, stepping back into the dark. She pulled the remote from her pocket. Her thumb hovered over the button. All around her, the ballroom pulsed with noise and light. The fake laughter, the clinking glasses, the hollow toasts. She whispered, "Let's see who you really are," and pressed it. At first, nothing happened. Then the lights flickered. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The giant screens behind the stage glitched, flickering between images of the couple and static. Clara frowned. "What's going on?" The sound system crackled. Then, without warning, a voice filled the ballroom. Calm, clear, and unmistakable. "My name is Evelyn Hale." The music stopped. Every head turned toward the screens. Clara's face went pale. "If you're watching this," Evelyn's recorded voice continued, "it means I've decided to tell the truth. All of it." Richard froze. His glass fell from his hand, shattering at his feet. On the screen, Evelyn appeared, sitting at her kitchen table, the flash drive on display beside her. "For years I supported my husband, Richard Hale. Together we built everything he owns. When he met Clara Whitmore, he didn't just betray me, he tried to destroy me." Gas filled the room. "The night of my accident, my brakes failed. It wasn't random. Clara Whitmore ordered her security team to tamper with my car." Clara's father stood up from his table, face red, voice booming. "Turn that off. Turn it off now." Staff scrambled, trying to find the source, but every screen, every projector, every sound system was locked into the feed. "You both wanted me erased," Evelyn's voice went on, calm and controlled. "You forged my name, stole my assets, and left me for dead. But the truth doesn't die." People began to whisper, horrified. Phones came out. Reporters started recording. Clara rushed to the control booth, shouting orders. "Shut it down! Cut the feed! Now!" But nothing stopped it. On the screen, Evelyn held up the signed documents, the photos, the forged deeds. Then the audio recording began to play. Clara's voice cold and sharp. "She's too good for you, Richard. I'll make her disappear, and you'll finally belong to me." The room erupted. Guests gasped. Some stood up. Others stepped away from the couple, whispering. Clara's father swayed on his feet, his hand gripping his chest. His assistant rushed to steady him, but he collapsed, hitting the floor hard. Panic broke out. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Richard backed away from the stage, his face drained of color. Clara turned toward him, her expression twisted with fury. "What did you do?" she hissed. He shook his head, trembling. I didn't." She slapped him, hard, the sound echoing over the chaos. "You idiot!" she screamed. "You let her live!" The crowd parted as someone began walking forward from the shadows. A woman in a simple black dress, hair swept back, face calm and pale under the golden light. Evelyn Hale. Gasps rippled through the room as she stepped into view. "Impossible," someone whispered. "She's alive?" Evelyn kept walking until she stood just a few feet from the stage. Every camera in the room swung toward her. She looked at Clara, the bride who once smiled while pretending she was dead, and said softly, "Did you really think I'd stay buried?" Clara's mouth fell open. Richard whispered her name, voice cracking. "Evelyn." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Hello, Richard," she said quietly. "You look terrible." The chaos around them faded into background noise, like the world had shrunk to the three of them. Clara stepped forward, trembling with rage. You don't belong here." Evelyn tilted her head. "That's funny." "I thought this was my story," Richard tried to speak, but Evelyn cut him off. "You already said your vows." Twice the crowd murmured, phones still recording, the scandal unfolding live before millions. Security hesitated, unsure what to do. No one wanted to be the one to drag out the woman whose face was on every screen exposing a crime. Clara's breathing grew uneven. "Turn it off!" she screamed again, but the video kept looping. Evelyn's calm voice repeating, "You both wanted me erased." Clara turned to Richard, eyes wild. "Do something." He looked at her, really looked, and something inside him broke. "I already did enough," he said softly. Evelyn's eyes flicked toward him, and for a fleeting second, he saw something like pity. Then it was gone. The guests began to move back, giving Evelyn space. She took another step forward. Her voice was low, but everyone heard it. "This is where it ends." The music had stopped. The air was thick with shock. Even the reporters were silent now, waiting. Clara's lip trembled, but she forced a laugh. "You think you can ruin me with a video?" Evelyn's mouth curved into a faint smile. "Oh, Clara." That was just the invitation. Clara froze under the lights, her white gown now too bright, too cruel. All eyes were on her. Investors, reporters, board members, and on the woman she tried to erase. Evelyn took another slow step forward. "You built an empire on lies," she said, voice steady, "and tonight it burns." Clara laughed, a high, shaky sound. "You have nothing left, Evelyn. No money, no name, no—" "Wrong," Evelyn cut in. "I have proof." And help from the crowd, a man stepped out, tall in a dark suit. Cameras flashed. It was Adrian Cole, Clara's ex-fiancé. Clara's smile vanished. "You?" Adrian's expression was cold. "You dumped me for him, then used my father's company to hide your fraud. You should have known I keep receipts." He turned to the guests. "I helped Mrs. Hale deliver everything to the police and the press." Gasps erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Evelyn handed a folder to the nearest officer, who had just arrived with a small team, badges visible. Inside were signatures, transfers, the final dagger. She looked straight at Clara. "Richard transferred all his remaining shares into your name last week. You thought it made you safer." Clara blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" Evelyn's tone was almost gentle. "It means when the fraud is seized, you lose everything, not him." The color drained from Clara's face. Then she turned on Richard, wild. "You did this to me?" He backed away. "Clara, I just did what you told me." She slapped him so hard the sound cracked through the hall. "You ruined me for her. You pathetic fool." She grabbed a champagne glass from the table and hurled it. It shattered at Evelyn's feet, splashing gold liquid across the marble. Evelyn didn't move. She stepped closer, calm amid the chaos. "You planned my death," she whispered. "I planned your ending." Security swarmed. The officers approached, one speaking into his radio. "We have confirmed documentation of embezzlement, fraud, and attempted homicide." Cameras exploded in flashes. Guests pulled out phones, broadcasting the spectacle live. Clara tried to push past them, shouting, "My father will fix this." "I'm Clara Whitmore." But her father was being carried out on a stretcher, pale and silent. Richard stumbled forward, reaching for Evelyn. "Evie, please. Listen, I never meant—" She turned to him, her eyes sharp, voice quiet. "You meant every choice you made. You just didn't think you'd have to live with them." He sagged as two officers took his arms. "Richard Hale, you're under arrest for embezzlement and conspiracy." Clara screamed, fighting the hands that grabbed her. "Don't touch me." The officers held firm. "Clara Whitmore, you're under arrest for attempted murder and fraud." Her veil tore as she struggled. The cameras captured everything. The broken pearls, the ripped gown, the end of her empire. Through it all, Evelyn stood still, breathing slowly, watching the chaos unfold like distant thunder. For months, she'd dreamed of this moment, and now that it was here, she felt no triumph, only release. Reporters shouted her name. "Mrs. Hale! How did you survive? What will you do now?" She turned toward them, voice calm, almost weary. "You can bury a woman's name," she said, "but not her truth." Then she walked away. Outside, rain had begun to fall. The sky split open, washing the heat and noise from the night. Evelyn stepped out into it, the cold drops sliding down her face like baptism. Martha was waiting at the curb with the twins. Lila ran into her arms. "Mom, are you okay?" Evelyn hugged them tightly, kissing their heads. "I am now." Liam looked past her at the flashing lights, the police cars. "Is it over?" She nodded. "Yes, it's over behind them." The hotel glowed like a burning crown. Sirens, umbrellas, shouts fading under the rain. Evelyn turned once more toward the entrance, watching as Richard and Clara were loaded into separate cars, their faces pale under the blue lights. She didn't smile at their downfall. She didn't need to. She took her children's hands. "Let's go home." They walked together through the puddles, their reflections breaking and rejoining with each step. Later that night, the house was quiet. The twins slept curled up beside each other. Evelyn stood by the window, the city lights flickering in the distance. Martha entered softly. "You did it," she said. Evelyn shook her head. "No." The truth did. Martha placed a hand on her shoulder. "What happens next?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "We live. We heal. We start again." She looked down at her hands. Steady now, strong again. "They thought taking everything would break me," she said, "but they only showed me what I was capable of." Morning headlines flooded every screen. Clara Whitmore arrested. $1 million fraud exposed live, on air. Richard Hale faces embezzlement. Charges as wife returns from the dead. Evelyn Hale. The woman they couldn't erase, the world had its spectacle. Evelyn had her peace. She poured herself coffee, opened the window, and let the morning air in. It smelled clean, like rain and new beginnings. On the table lay the flash drive that had changed everything. She picked it up once more, just to feel its weight, then tucked it into a drawer. No more recordings, no more revenge, only life. Before leaving for the day, she paused at the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the same one who had cried in a hospital bed or hid behind fear. This woman's eyes were clear, her shoulders straight, her silence powerful. She smiled, not out of pride, but freedom. "Real power," she whispered, "doesn't scream. It waits, watches, and strikes when the truth can't be denied." Then she turned off the light and walked out, the sound of her children's laughter following her down the hall. Outside, the last traces of last night's rain shimmered on the pavement, washing away the glitter, the lies, and the ghosts. And with every step, Evelyn Hale felt lighter. The story that began with betrayal had ended with truth. And truth, finally, belonged to her. Betrayal may build empires, but truth dismantles them. Real power doesn't come from revenge. It comes from rising when no one expects you to.